My name is Phyllis Kyei Mensah, and I am originally from Ghana, West Africa. And I got my Ph.D. here in the US in educational leadership, culture, and curriculum at Miami University in Ohio. My research is about how indigenous knowledges from Africana communities, so on the continent, but also here in the diaspora, can help us decolonize educational practices. So just a question of how do we get young people to be interested in indigenous knowledge, and how does the knowledges in those spaces help us decolonize the current practices in education? Doing the research from the point of view of women, because oftentimes when you go to the education workforce, they form a majority because most teachers are women. I think everywhere you go, mostly, because it's definitely in the US and in Ghana too. But when it comes to like decision making, policy making, they don't necessarily get to have a say, So I decided to do my work with women.
Let's now talk about some of the most pressing challenges or barriers that you have faced in your career path and as a postdoc.
First of all, your immigration issue is, if you are an international student in the US, immigration is one of the major things you would face. Getting an institution that is even willing to sponsor you is a headache. And then once the institution sponsors you, you are tied to that institution. So, for example, if they're not treating you right at that institution, you can't even leave because you're tied to it. If you leave, then your status becomes invalid, I guess. Socio-cultural aspects, at least my PIs were, Americans, and while they would say they're social justice people and all of that, cultural competency-wise, they don't necessarily are not necessarily equipped to work with people who communicate differently, right?
What is your native language, your mother language, and if that has, because you speak English perfectly and beautifully,
Thank you.
But I wonder if you perceive language to be a barrier in your professional path, in your role as a postdoc, and even during your doctoral studies.
Oh yeah, definitely. Language is a big thing, because even though I speak English, I guess, okay, I can get by with English, I still don't think in English. I think in my mother tongue. So sometimes there are things you want to say that you don't have the words to say it. so like, you can only approximate in English, but it doesn't work out right. When you have articles you need to read, sometimes the language is complex. You have to. It takes you longer to read things and understand things, to communicate the way you want to, and also, even language aside, cultural ways of communicating that. So, for example, maybe I'm used to a way I communicate. Somebody in this country might see that as being aggressive. Yesterday we were talking about touching, right? Sometimes in my culture it might be okay, but in this culture it may not be okay. Or I could say something that in my culture could be okay, but here somebody might interpret it as being aggressive when I don't mean to be aggressive at all, So those kind of things that you get misunderstood a lot, so sometimes you just decide to keep quiet. And in the American society, it thrives on being outspoken, right? So that also sometimes will go against you, depending on who is talking and what the person thinks. So yeah, that's one of those things.
Yeah, let's go back to this thing that I find really interesting, that also resonates with my own experience as a postdoc, of your mentors and the people who you worked with in your postdoc position. You're mentioning that even though there are people who are, let's say, committed to issues of decolonization and indigenous knowledges and the like, they are not really well equipped, to have someone in their team who come from a different linguistic and cultural background. Let's concentrate on that because I really find this to be really important.
First of all, at least my postdoc, I moved from one state to another state, right? So getting used to the new place, fitting in, balancing the role of the new position, straight from graduate school, getting, because they had a project and I was brought on, so I needed to first understand what this project was. I wasn't there when they were writing the grant, so understanding all of that needed time, and also understanding them. So for example, in my own case, my job was mostly remote. So I worked from home. I didn't get to go to campus as much. So most of our communication were like virtual. And when you communicate by text, things get misinterpreted, of course. And when you're explaining something new to somebody over text, it's not the same as when you're talking face to face, so there's going to be definitely misunderstandings. And then the cultural aspect of it too. You as an American, you might say something that you'd assume I understand, but I may not understand. So maybe asking questions, but then also coming from a culture where sometimes you're not supposed to. In my culture, right, or I would say for me, when I don't understand things, I prefer not to ask questions. I prefer to learn by observing. I guess not understanding that people have different learning
curves.
Learning curves, there are some people you'd have to explain some things to them a couple of times before they get it. There's some people who are, and it was also a new field to, technology. I'm not in technology, was learning. So it was a whole lot of things that I don't think they were well equipped. They think they are, but I don't think they were necessarily well equipped to handle working
with someone from Africa, perhaps?
As a black person, as an African, as an immigrant. So there are so many layers to it. Yep.
Yeah, so intersectional issues there about your own positionality. And do you think you were valued, your knowledge, your experience?
So sometimes yes, sometimes no.
I really sympathize with that, and thanks for sharing. And can you tell me a little bit about how you were able to navigate, or what strategies you use to navigate this difficult environment, to be able to succeed, to thrive, and to continue to be motivated in your own work?
Talking to family. So I talked to my mom a lot. Talked to other friends who were in other positions. Hey, this and this is going on. How was it when you were there? And then they would share, how they did, how it's supposed to be, what I can do to make it better, I guess. So mostly talking to people, friends, families, mentors, doing extra work, being proactive.
And did you have any structures of support at the university?
Nope, I didn't see any.
Yeah.
So there weren't really structures, and my co-PIs also. So we would meet. Maybe we only met online for Zoom and things like that. But besides that, I didn't really get to see much of the campus.
Yeah.
Or interact with people. When I started, the understanding was they had already built relationships with these native people. In September, they told me, I guess, that the community said they didn't have the resources to do it, so they were backing out. And the project was also still forming, so the PIs didn't know what to do necessarily. But they expected me to know what to do. I don't know if it makes sense.
So they were expecting more from you that you could have.
Yeah, because we are all figuring that thing out, right?
And so what's next for you? Tell me about this.
I mean, I'm interviewing for positions, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, and you have a campus visit, right? How did it go?
Yes, I have a
Yeah.
campus visit. I did one last.
Wyoming?
Oh no! The Wyoming one was a job offer that got rescinded because of H-1B restrictions too.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they couldn't support the H-1B?
They could, but the salary they were offering was below the H-1B requirements. They weren't willing to increase it. So I've done one campus visit, and then I have another one the week after.
Also for a postdoc position?
No, both are tenure track positions.
Oh, really? Okay. In education?
One is in Africana Studies, the other one is in education.
So fingers crossed for you.
And the next one is...
So you have a good feeling about this one?
I have a good feeling.
Yes.
I'm just praying.
I think it seems from what you're communicating that it was a good experience on the end.
Yeah, it was a good one.
What a good way to end this interview.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it was a...
No, I'm sorry. I actually took you to that place.
No, it's
But
good.
and I really appreciate, you sharing this with me. I really appreciate it.